G'day, it's Mike Callander here with you. I'm an Ableton Certified trainer for ADSR, and today we're looking at Drum Bus, one of the new audio devices in Ableton Live 10. So Drum Bus is designed to add some character and some glue to a drum program, or in fact it can be applied to any audio. So if you're imagining you've got a drum kit where there's a kick drum or a hi-hat or a snare or a clap, they're operating on very different frequencies, and what this does is uses some tried and tested techniques that are very familiar to mixing and production, and puts them in a kind of a mega mix package that allows us to have just a few controls but a lot of a big feature set that allows us to add a lot of value and a lot of character to the audio. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to play you a very simple, dry and uninteresting little beat that I made with the 808 core kit. Here it is. And then I'm going to, for the first time, turn on Drum Bus. I'm just going to click the little device activator. That's on now, and this is Drum Bus's default state. So you won't hear a lot of difference there until we start taking control of some of these parameters. So the first thing I'm going to adjust is the drive amount. So this is going to drive the input signal. So we're already starting to see a bit of character appearing there. And then if I look below the drive dial, I've got 3 buttons for distortion types. So soft distortion is going to apply wave shaping distortion to the signal, medium is going to apply limiting distortion, and hard is going to apply clipping distortion with a kind of boost on the bass frequencies. I'll cycle through those. So it can get quite aggressive there, as you can hear, especially with the hard distortion chosen. I've got a trim value below that where I can reduce the input level, so I'll just do that. And you might have noticed before I was kind of jumping into the red a little bit on my output on the other side of the device. I've just pegged it back a little, well, quite a lot actually, nearly 8 decibels, and that's gotten that under control. I could even take it back a bit further if I like. Below that, I've got a compression button. So this is a kind of a one button, let's get it under control compressor. It's going to glue things together. So we can hear that there's low end and high end content in this. So it's going to apply a kind of a one size fits all value to that. So you'll hear things are a bit tighter and more glued together. I'm going to bring the trim value down again because of that addition, because it's taken me into the red over here on the output. I could also adjust the output value, but I want to get things under control early, so I might just type in -10 now. And I might even try a bit lower. I'll go -13. Okay, so now, moving along, toward the middle of the device, I have this amount for crunch. I can turn this dial and add an extra layer of distortion to the mid and high frequencies. Let's hear that. I really like what it's doing, but I don't know that I like it at all frequencies. That grit and the dirtiness and the kind of the drive, it sounds really good, but I might want to also consider applying some damping. So the damping frequency at its default is 9.2 kilohertz. I'm going to turn this dial around and adjust it. You might feel differently to me about where you want to leave it, but of course you can experiment with that with your own audio, but I'll show you how it works. can hear quite a difference kind of between dark or dull and very bright and kind of sizzling on the top end. So for this I'm going to leave it around 1.04 kilohertz. And below that I've got a transient style. So this is for transient shaping, and I can emphasize or de-emphasize the transients of those mid-high frequencies. So it sounds quite different. If I turn it all the way to the left, it's going to give me a kind of a gated effect. And if I turn it all the way to the right, it's going to sound more like an expanding effect. Let's listen to it. Kind of like it all the way to the left in this case. That's definitely going to change depending on your drum program, but I might just dial back a little bit of this damping frequency to make it a bit brighter. And with that value dialed in, I'll turn it all the other way so we can audition that. To my ears, that sounds quite nice. And moving further along, further to the right-hand side and into the middle of this device, we have a boom value. So we can adjust the amount of low-frequency enhancement that's happening to this program. Now, when you're doing this with an 808-inspired drum kit, there's already quite a lot of bass, quite a lot of low-end content. So this might be something that we use subtly, or if we want to add lots and lots of character and take us, further into distortion territory, depending on what kind of music or sound you're trying to make, we might want to be more aggressive with this. Let's see how it sounds. So aggressive is right, and boom is aptly named. I can adjust the frequency of that boom or that low-end enhancement with this dial. So if I was to apply a system of tuning my drums to the rest of my musical content, I might consider checking the frequency of the fundamental notes. So if I was in A, I might do 55 hertz, and that would give me the note of A for that low frequency content. So it's kind of enhancing that, but it's also kind of tunable. To demonstrate that, I can actually go further down to the bottom and click on this little switch that allows me to audition the boom. So we can hear the kind of pitch result of the low frequency enhancer. So I'll turn that on. And I will move this frequency dial around and you'll hear some kind of pitch changes. What you'll also see down here is that this value is changing, the note name is changing. So it's currently at B0 plus, which means it's a bit above the note of B0 in terms of frequency, but if I click that, it will force it to the nearest note. So if I was writing my track in B, I could click that and force it. If I wanted it to be A and I was close to 55 hertz and I click that, it's currently saying that I'm sort of in A sharp or just below A sharp territory. If I click that, it takes me to A sharp, and if I dial this back even a bit further and I'm close to A0 with a little bit extra, that's what the plus is for. If I click that, it'll take me to exactly that 55 hertz. Let's listen to that. I can also adjust the decay of the low end frequency content. So the decay rate means how much am I going to hear that bass enhancement ringing out. If I want to make it tighter and more punchy, I might consider rolling that back. So you can hear we get the the early fast attack, sort of the punchiness of the bass, but it doesn't ring out for a really long time with a long decay or a long release. And I'll deselect this audition switch so we can hear the whole thing again. I've just dialed back. I put a bit of the decay, a bit more of the decay in and a bit less of the boom value in there as I was listening. And the last few things that I should be looking at with this device are the output level. I'll bring that back a little. And then the dry and wet value. So I'm currently set to 100% wet, i.e. I'm hearing all of the effect. But where this can get really useful in terms of adding just a little bit of character to an otherwise flat or lifeless drum program is I can apply this dry and wet value much lower. So if I do something a bit more modest, like 10% or say, or I've got it up to 24% now, if I have a listen to that, and if I compare that to how it sounds with the device off, and back on, that allows me to inject a subtle amount of grit into that program and just make it sound a bit more treated and a bit more professional. So that's using it's kind of replacing what we might need to do if we were using a parallel compression or a parallel treatment method where we'd set up a completely different return track and we would send the various signals over to that and apply compression or drive or distortion or a combination of those to create a more sort of glued together cohesive sound, and then we could blend that sound that's a bit more crunched and a bit less dynamic, and we could blend it with the more dynamic original dry content. That's called parallel processing, or sometimes called New York compression or New York processing. So this device allows us to achieve that just with this dry and wet value without setting up any of the other sends and returns. So it's quite nifty. So just to remind you where we started, and this is where we've ended up. So that's Drum Bus. I really love this audio device. I hope you do too. Look forward to hearing what people are doing with it. Cheers.